The notification popped up while I was grading spelling tests at my kitchen table. Family WhatsApp group. I almost ignored it. Mother's Day was coming, and my mother, Helena Rowe, loved performative gestures, big dinners, carefully staged photos, posts designed to look warm while leaving bruises underneath. I opened the message anyway. She'd invited everyone to a Mother's Day dinner. My brother, my sister, their spouses, cousins, aunts, everyone, except me. Then came the line that made my hands go still. All my children are successful, except you. You chose a small life as a teacher, and I no longer call you my daughter. No emojis, no hesitation, just a sentence dropped into a group chat like it was a fact everyone should agree on. No one replied, not to defend me, not to question it, not even to say it was harsh. The silence wasn't neutral. It was confirmation. I stared at the screen longer than I want to admit, waiting for something to soften it, a follow-up, a correction, a joke gone too far. Nothing came. I thought about typing, explaining, reminding her that I loved my job, that I paid my bills, that teaching wasn't failure, it was choice. Instead, I put the phone face down. I didn't argue with her. I didn't ask why. I didn't announce anything dramatic. I simply walked away, quietly, left the group, muted the numbers, stopped waiting for people who'd already decided who I was worth to them. At the time, it felt like giving up. I didn't know yet that it was the first decision I'd ever made purely for myself, and that a few years later, that message would come back to her, not as an argument, but as a boundary she couldn't cross anymore. My name is Alara Finch. I was 27 when that message landed. In my family, age mattered less than titles. My older sister, Brielle, was a cosmetic dermatologist with a clinic downtown and a schedule booked 6 months out. My younger brother, Caleb, worked mergers and acquisitions for a firm whose name my mother dropped like a credential. At dinners, they spoke in acronyms. Their lives sounded expensive. And then there was me, elementary school teacher, 3rd grade. Bright markers, reading circles, kids who still hugged your legs without thinking twice. I loved my job. I loved the quiet victories, the first time a kid read aloud without shaking, the notes parents left at the end of the year. At home, none of that counted. Helena called it potential wasted. She said it like she was diagnosing an illness. You were the smart one, she'd remind me. You just lacked ambition. My father, Martin, rarely contradicted her. Silence was his specialty. He sat back and let the hierarchy arrange itself. At family gatherings, conversations split naturally. Brielle and Caleb were asked about promotions, investments, relocations. I was asked if I was still teaching, like it was a phase I'd outgrow. I learned early how to make myself smaller, how to redirect questions, how to smile and say I was happy without sounding defensive. That WhatsApp message didn't come out of nowhere. It was the most honest thing Helena had ever said. What shocked me wasn't the cruelty, it was the certainty. She truly believed success was something you could measure once and erase someone with permanently. So when I walked away, it wasn't impulsive, it was overdue, and it meant leaving behind not just my mother, but the version of myself that kept trying to qualify for a life she'd already dismissed. Before I go on, quick check-in. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? You can say the city, the country, or just the hour on the clock. I'm always curious who these stories reach. All right, now let me tell you what happened after I stopped trying to belong. I didn't announce my exit. I didn't post a long message, didn't block anyone dramatically, didn't demand explanations or apologies. I just removed myself. I left the group chat, stopped replying to family threads, changed my number quietly, and let the old one expire. Social media went first, not out of spite, out of relief. I didn't want to see filtered dinners I wasn't invited to, or achievements that only mattered when they could be compared against mine. For a while, nothing happened. No calls asking if I was okay, no texts wondering where I'd gone, no, maybe we were too harsh. That hurt more than the message, because it confirmed something I'd been afraid of for years. I wasn't being pushed out, I was being allowed to leave. So, I started over in smaller ways, new routines, new friendships built without explanations attached. I poured myself into my classroom, stayed late to help kids who reminded me of myself, quiet, observant, underestimated. I took on extra coursework at night, not because I wanted to prove anything, but because learning had always felt like home. I moved to a different district. No one knew my last name or my family hierarchy. I met people who asked what I enjoyed, not what it earned. Some nights were lonely. I won't pretend otherwise. You don't unlearn belonging overnight. But something else grew in that space. Clarity. Without my family's voices in my head, I could finally hear my own. And slowly, without anyone watching, I started building a life that didn't require permission. The strange thing is, they never noticed I was gone. Not until the world did. The years that followed didn't look dramatic from the outside. They looked ordinary. And that was the miracle. I married Owen Hale, a man who never asked me to justify my choices. He listened when I talked about my students like they mattered, because to him, they did. He brought a daughter into our life, Mara, who learned quickly that love wasn't something you auditioned for. I adopted her without hesitation. Papers, signatures, a quiet afternoon that changed everything. I kept teaching. Then I studied after bedtime. Then I took on curriculum work, mentoring younger teachers who burned out faster than they should have. I didn't chase titles, but they found me anyway. No one clapped, no one announced it. I liked it that way. My family stayed silent. Months passed, then years. Not a holiday text, not a check-in. It was like I'd been filed away as a solved problem. And slowly, that stopped hurting. Because in the space they left, I built something sturdy. A home that felt warm. A career that felt aligned. A sense of self that didn't wobble when someone raised an eyebrow. Then, one morning, a colleague forwarded me a link. A local article. My name in bold. A photo I didn't recognize. Me laughing, unguarded. It had nothing to do with my family, everything to do with the work. By the afternoon, my phone, my old number, started lighting up through a forwarded thread. Invitations, congratulations, familiar names. I didn't open them yet. I just sat there for a moment, realizing something quietly powerful. The life I built in their absence had become visible, and they were about to step back into it as if nothing had ever happened. The first message came from my brother. Not an apology, not a question. Just a link to the article, and a line that read, "Didn't know you were doing all this. Mom's proud." I stared at it for a long time. Proud wasn't the word she'd used years ago. Then came the real invitation. A group email this time. Formal, coordinated. My mother's voice was unmistakable even through text. She and my siblings planned to attend an upcoming recognition event tied to the article. Public, photographed, well attended. They wanted to support me as a family. They even mentioned where they'd be sitting. The family section. I laughed out loud, not bitterly, just surprised by the audacity. They hadn't asked how I was, hadn't acknowledged the message that erased me, hadn't asked permission. They assumed proximity could be reclaimed the way it had been revoked. I showed Owen the email. He read it once, then looked at me carefully. "What do you want to do?" That question stopped me, because for years my life had been shaped by what other people expected me to tolerate. This time, there was no pressure, no hierarchy to navigate, just choice. "I'm not going to stop them," I said finally. Owen raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" "Yes," because something had shifted. I didn't need to protect myself by hiding anymore. I didn't need to confront them privately. If they wanted to show up publicly, then they could meet the truth there too. Not my version, theirs, unedited. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being seen. The auditorium was full. Educators, administrators, people I'd worked alongside for years, cameras set up near the aisles, a low, steady buzz that always comes before something official. I sat backstage, adjusting my notes, breathing slowly. Then I saw them. My mother, Helena, walking in like she belonged there. Brielle beside her, polished and confident. Caleb following, phone already out, scanning the room for familiar faces. They took their seats exactly where they'd planned. Front section, clear view, perfect angles. They looked proud. Not of me, of the moment. When my name was called, the room applauded. I walked out, heart steady, not racing the way it used to when I imagined them watching. I thanked my colleagues, my mentors, the teachers who stayed late and showed up early without expecting praise. And then I reached the part everyone leans in for, family. "I want to thank my husband, Owen," I said, smiling, "and my daughter, Mara. You are my home." The pause stretched. I didn't add anything else. No parents, no siblings, just the truth. I could feel it before I heard it, the shifting, the whispering, the realization spreading through the room like a ripple. Helena stood. She didn't wait for permission. She moved toward the aisle, hand raised slightly, ready to correct the narrative. I met her eyes, calm. 4 years ago, she'd written that she no longer called me her daughter. Now, with a room full of witnesses, I was simply honoring that boundary. The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was thunderous. And for the first time in my life, my silence wasn't interpreted as weakness, it was understood as strength. They escorted her back to her seat gently. No scene, no argument, just a quiet intervention that said enough without saying anything at all. I finished the speech the way I'd planned, thanked my team, thanked the students who taught me more than any curriculum ever could. I walked off stage to a standing ovation that felt grounding, real. Backstage, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from colleagues, old friends, even strangers who'd seen the moment and understood it without needing context. Support came easily when the truth had room to breathe. My family waited until the room emptied. Helena approached me first, face tight, voice controlled. "You embarrassed me." I nodded. "You erased me." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Brielle stared at the floor. Caleb hovered, unsure where to stand when the hierarchy had finally collapsed. I didn't argue. I didn't rehash the past. I didn't ask for an apology that wouldn't mean anything anyway. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshot. The message, the one that started it all. "You said you no longer called me your daughter," I said calmly. "Tonight, I respected that." Silence. "What do you want from us now?" Caleb asked. I shook my head. "Nothing." And I meant it. "I have a family," I said, one that didn't need proof or prestige to stay. Helena whispered my name like it was a spell she could still use. It wasn't. I walked away with Owen's hand in mine, Mara skipping between us, the doors closing behind us without drama. Some bridges don't burn. They simply stop being crossed. Months passed. Not the dramatic kind where apologies arrive late at night or long emails try to rewrite history. Just quiet months where life kept moving forward without interruption. My mother sent a handwritten letter once, careful, formal. She wrote about pride, misunderstanding, how families say things they don't mean. She didn't reference the message directly. She didn't name what she'd done. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, because I was finished negotiating reality. Work stayed steady. I took on more responsibility, not because I was chasing anything, but because leadership had started to feel natural. I knew how to listen. I knew how to protect people quietly. Those skills mattered more than titles ever had. At home, Mara learned to ride a bike. Owen burned dinner one night, and we laughed until it hurt. We planned a summer trip without checking anyone else's calendar. Ordinary things, the kind that build a life you don't have to explain. Every so often, I'd hear updates through other people, my family telling the story in ways that softened their part. That was fine. Everyone needs a version they can live with. Here's the truth I carry now. Being excluded didn't break me. It clarified me. I learned that belonging built on conditions will always come with an exit clause, that silence can be a choice, not a punishment, and that walking away doesn't mean you lost, it means you finally stopped playing a game rigged against you. If you're listening to this and you're waiting for permission to step out of a space that keeps shrinking you, take this as it. You don't owe access to people who only value you when you're impressive. Sometimes the strongest response isn't confrontation, it's building a life so full there's simply no room left for those who couldn't see you when it mattered. People assume reconciliation is the goal, that if someone reaches out later, softer, slower, you're supposed to meet them halfway, that time automatically repairs what was broken by intention. It doesn't. I didn't slam doors. I didn't block emails out of anger. I didn't make announcements about boundaries. I simply stopped reopening something that had already been closed. The truth is, my family didn't miss me when I was gone. They missed the version of me that reflected well on them once I became visible. That distinction matters. I thought about that a lot, about how quickly silence became unbearable once it threatened their image, about how easy it was to dismiss my life when it didn't add to theirs, about how conditional love always reveals itself eventually, usually when you stop performing. One afternoon, while helping Mara with homework, she asked, "Why don't we see your mom?" I didn't lie. I didn't overshare. I said, "Sometimes people don't know how to love without rules." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her math problem. That's when it hit me. Breaking cycles doesn't require speeches, it requires consistency. I didn't need closure conversations or dramatic forgiveness arcs. I needed alignment, and I finally had it. The life I built didn't erase the past, it just stopped revolving around it. And that's the part no one warns you about when you walk away quietly. Peace doesn't arrive loudly. It settles in, unnoticed at first, until one day you realize you're no longer bracing for impact. You're just living. And that, more than anything, tells you that you chose right. I used to think being chosen meant being included, invited, tagged, praised in rooms I wasn't in. Now I know better. Being chosen is waking up in a life that fits, one where you don't rehearse conversations in your head, one where your worth isn't debated or ranked or compared. My family still exists somewhere. Holidays still happen without me. Photos still get posted. Stories still get told in ways that make them comfortable. I don't correct them, because I'm not building my life in response to theirs anymore. I'm building it forward. I teach, I lead, I come home to a husband who sees me fully and a daughter who has never once questioned whether she belongs. That matters more than any title, any ceremony, any seat at a table I was never meant to beg for. That WhatsApp message didn't end my relationship with my family. It ended my confusion. It showed me exactly how love was being measured and gave me the chance to stop paying that price. If you're listening to this and you've been quietly shrinking to stay connected, hear this clearly. You are allowed to walk away without a fight. You are allowed to succeed without inviting everyone back. And you are allowed to protect your peace, even if it disappoints people who benefited from your silence. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't proving them wrong. It's living so honestly that their opinion no longer has a place to land. That's the life I chose, and I've never once regretted it. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this, real, quiet victories and people finally choosing themselves.